Hi there, and welcome to Alta Live. As our regulars know, it takes a minute for our audience to fill into the Zoom room. While that happens, it's my job to welcome you all here and let you know what we are here to discuss today. It is so exciting to welcome Ayodele Nzinga. She is Oakland's first poet laureate. Ayodele was profiled in the current issue of Alta Journal, this one right here, by contributor Keenan Norris. In addition to her work in poetry, Ayodele is an actress, producing director, playwright, dramaturg, performance consultant, educator, and community advocate. You're really in for a treat today to hear what she has to say. She's going to be in conversation with Alta's own Alta contributor, Keenan Norris. Keenan's latest novel, The Confession of Copeland Kane, was published last year. He's the author of the story collection By the Lemon Tree and the novel Brother and the Dancer. His work has also, as I mentioned, appeared in Alta. You can read it in our current issue. If you are unfamiliar with Alta, we are a quarterly focused on California and the West. My name's Beth Spotswood. I'm Alta's digital editor. If you like what we do here today, like interviews that and profiles that people like Keenan do, I do hope you will check out our work. You can learn more about us at altaonline.com. In fact, today's interview will be recorded and posted to altaonline.com later today. We host weekly interviews like this. We host a monthly book club. Tomorrow night, we'll welcome Michael Conley. And you can join Alta either as a member to receive this quarterly issue, issues like this for $50 a year. You get a tote bag. We're actually running a discount right now. I'll send you a link to that. Or become a digital subscriber for just $3 a month. So please consider supporting us so we can continue to do events like this. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Ask questions for our guest. They'll chat for about 30 minutes. Ayodele will also be reading for us, a real treat. And then we will get to as many of your questions as we can. The chat is open. It's always nice to see where people are zooming in from today. I'm here in Novato, California. I'm going to get lost and turn it over to, hi, Mark from Cupertino. I'm going to turn it over to Keenan now. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Beth. And thank you, Ayodele, for being here, for doing all that you do. You're really one of the first people. When I moved to Oakland about 20 years ago, you were one of the first artists who inspired me. When I first saw you on stage, it was as word slanger, as the spoken word poet, and your voice was a bolt of lightning. It, threw me up against the wall. It was incredible, the power of your work, and yet your work has many different, as Beth just said, you're not only a spoken word poet, but you also work on the page. Your recent book, Sorrowland Oracle, is a beautiful book of poetry. And then, of course, your work on stage with the Lower Bottom Play is, I've got a short formal bio that I should probably read at this point. Then I'll jump into that first question. So, Ayodele Nzinga holds a PhD in transformative education and change and an MFA in writing and consciousness. She's a member of the Alameda County Hall of Fame. She founded Oakland's oldest North American African theater company, the Lower Bottom Plays, and is the only director in the world to direct the American Century Cycle by August Wilson in chronological order. She's the author of Performing Literacy, a narrative inquiry into performance pedagogy, The Horse Eaters, Sorrowland Oracle, and Incandescent. Her work appears in numerous journals and anthologies, and she's the inaugural Poet Laureate of Oakland. Thank you again for being here. Let me ask you my first question. So I mentioned all the different forms that your art takes. You move across so many different artistic realms. Can you tell me about how these different aspects of your art inform one another? How does, for example, the theater inform your spoken word performances? Or maybe how does your poetry and spoken word feed into each other?
So first of all, I don't draw such a line between spoken word and poetry. It's one of those interesting things people accomplish when they control things like the creation of genre. I'm a poet, I'm a writer. And if you're going to do your work aloud, then you should do it in a way that pulls people in. Now, I know between you and I, we have seen people read their work and understood that you should never read aloud. You do your own work a disservice. So I've been trying real hard not to be that person. So I think that theater definitely helps with that, with presence, with timing, knowing the voice is an instrument, eye contact, and that communication is actually only 23% verbal. So paying close attention to all the other things that allow us to cash the agreements we make around language, you know? And so, and then the many hats, don't get confused. I actually am a one-trick pony. I am only in one conversation, and everything I do is the same thing. I am interested in being fully human. I am interested in livity, thriving for everybody, and in particular, and especially for Black folk.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And yeah, so as I said, you're one of the first artists who really made an impression on me when I moved to Oakland. And I know I'll always associate your work with West Oakland, with 920 Peralta, with the Lower Bottom Players. How has Oakland shaped you as an artist?
I think that places have energy. Oakland is the center of my universe in many, many ways, artistically, politically, my consciousness as a artist, a person marked by color, even being a woman marked by color, all come into crisp view in Oakland, and intersect with Oakland. I purposely founded an arts practice in West Oakland because it was emblematic of the narratives and the lived realities that resemble mine around the globe. It's the same kind of energy as in Haiti or Sit Soleil or in Joburg. So in the sense that all these spaces are in reality the same space, like pearls strung out through diaspora. Oakland is on purpose for me. I like to say, as an artist, everything is intentional. There's nothing that's by happens chance or been left to luck or maybe. It's all on purpose. And so for me, Oakland was on purpose. And the Lower Bottoms are the first place I ever in my entire life lived on purpose, because it's where I chose.
Yeah. I want to say too that we have when I'm looking at the participants here on the call, we have some Oakland folks, some students, former and current of mine that I really thankful you're on the call, from Carmen Kennedy, Derek Newton, who chiming in from Oakland there, and other folks. Thank you all for being here. Let me let me keep it moving forward. So in interviewing you for the article that I wrote that Beth spoke to in the print and digital version of Alta's latest issue, we discussed how you were able to use the Lower Bottom Play as performances of Shakespeare early in the life of your acting collective. The performances of Shakespeare as a bridge to the work of the master August Wilson. Were you frustrated that this was the route you had to take to get to Wilson's work? And can you speak to the way that Shakespeare and the canon in general tends to crowd out other playwrights, especially Black and Indigenous playwrights?
I can't actually say that I was frustrated.
Okay.
One, I actually enjoyed discovering Shakespeare as an adult, reading it for myself and framing it. I discovered some really dope soap operas. I discovered this obscure dude talking truth to power, talking about stuff he shouldn't talk about, and meddling in verse, no less. So I discovering him on my own terms, I looked at the technique and said, yeah, that's pretty dope there. I see what you're doing. You're doing a thing there, and I see it. The best start is universal. So the idea that it would take Shakespeare to get me to Wilson is, I guess, in a sense, sad. But it helped me understand that the best art is universal, that if you can find yourself inside of it, it has value. So that set the table for who can find themselves inside of there. It also helped undergird for me things like colorblind casting, which I'm really not a fan of, unless we're going to engage something like the classics and then understand that we're overwriting. It means something because there are narratives attached to the color and the experiences that we project and the lived reality that comes with those colors. So Wilson, however I found my way to him, that was like my ballast stone. It was my affair with Wilson, I like to say, began after he died, but it was nonetheless very, very deep and enduring. We still commune. To have gone through that work in the manner that we did, I posit creates a ritual that few people have actually gone through, that was never enacted even when the master himself was alive. I also say that my early experience with Shakespeare then gives some gravitas to me saying that August Wilson is America's Shakespeare.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, I appreciate all the wisdom there, the reflections on both Shakespeare and on Wilson, in the ways that you've so dynamically worked with and worked through, both their legacies, their stage legacies. I think I have time for one more question on there, if that's okay, before we go to the reading. I think I got time for one more. So Marvin X has had a profound impact on your work. X was among the most important early figures in the Black arts movement and the movement for ethnic studies in America's classrooms. Why, in your view, is it that he and other such historically important Black artists have been disregarded, dismissed, and largely forgotten?
You spoke about the canon a moment ago. I posit there are two canons. And in the continuum of the Black arts movement, we have people like X and also Baraka, may he rest in peace, who shaped what, again, we talked earlier about genres. There's also power to bookcase movements. And I defy all of the literature that says that the Black arts movement has ended. I work in the continuum of the Black arts movement. And if you understand Black culture, it's actually a circle. So everything flows from one thing to another. Negritude flowed into the Renaissance, which flowed into the Black arts movement, which flowed into hip hop. And just like I said, I'm always saying the same thing. We always saying the same thing. It's the narrative. We are the news. We bring the story. An experience, a quick story about Baraka and X. I can remember sitting at a restaurant in Jack London Square. And knowledge is a circular thing. Sometimes the student teaches the teachers. And so I'm blessed to have been mentored by Baraka and by Marvin X. The two of them comprised the Black Arts Movement, the East Coast progenitor and the West Coast progenitor. So we were having a conversation about movements or the lack thereof. And they were, in that moment, really, really interested not being associated with hip hop as a movement. It was just different. And they definitely didn't have anything to do with what they considered a much tamer movement, the Harlem Renaissance. You know, the Black Arts Movement stands alone. If you look at some of Marvin's later writings and some of Baraka's later writings, they became a lot more fluid in that thought. The idea that there's a continuum, one flows from the other, neither could have existed without what happened before. It's like the medium changes because the audience changes, perhaps, or like any good griot. You have to update the story for the circumstance, yeah? You have to listen to the room. And so, yeah, much praise to teachers. I have been blessed.
Yes, we all have. And speaking of teachers, there, just my personal two cents on that. It's funny because I encountered your work in the early 2000s for the first time, and I didn't know until much later, 10 plus years later, when you told me your story that that we had been linked through Marvin X, and through my father, who was one of the student protesters at Fresno State, attempting to keep him employed there when the California government itself came down against Black studies in the late 1960s, early 1970s. That we had been linked 30 years before. Speaking of continuums. In order to, give your work, your incredible work, as much space as possible, I'd love to go to just invite you to read at this point.
So I came in the room with the thought where we separate things, and a thought from Baraka, who says that you cannot separate Black arts from politics. That is, the two are inseparable. And the thought that in art, we can sometimes frame things in a different way. So the piece I brought through the door today is called Polytrix. Nothing good can ever come of a herd of sheep following a pack of wolves. The sheep are deaf, blind, walk in their sleep. The wolves are wide awake, ravenous, sharp teeth, mean dogs, known for crapping where they eat. Who left the wolves to tend the sheep? Wolves say sheep pick them. Lions say the wolves trick them. You've been bamboozled, tainted milk laced with poisoned honey. Noses to the grindstone, the 3-car shuffle is on. Sell them what's behind door number 2. And if they buy that crap, I want you to sell them this too. Tell them the first one's free. Get in line early for a small fee. You get 2 for the price of 3. Package it as deluxe luxury. And the last survivor gets groceries tomorrow. Promise them a tomorrow. They will follow. We gonna work it out tomorrow. For now, just follow. Don't remove the blindfold, please. No references to history. Pay attention to what you think you see. Keep your mind inside the car. Ignore what you hear. The biggest conspiracy is the conspiracy to convince you there's no conspiracy. Bloodlines, lines of blood. It costs a lot to make you dumb. Cheaper to divide you. Have you fight amongst yourselves, sell your guns, supply choices, conclusions, help you draw lines. We got peacekeepers, will sell, street sweepers. We got grief givers and grief relievers, mass deceivers, buy and sell you, pin stroke you, veto you, legislate you, charge you, define and fine you, fees, please, divine for you, spin it, spend it, steal it, blame the wolves, or blame the believers, sheep following wolves. Nothing good can ever come from litanies of legal fiction. Father knows best. He keeps the truth close to his chest. They don't really care about us. Content to devour you and Toto too. Sneaky sorcerers manifesting your destiny, cooking books and sound bites, mixing media to feed sheep, 50-inch flat screens in a soft economy, 3D stupidity 24/7 on TV, over 5G in 4K. Buy what you see. Here can be made to believe the wizard is in. News at 11. Lead story. Wolves save world. Super wolves. Sheep applaud. Continue sleeping. Meanwhile, behind edited scenes, wolves divide world. Sheep sleep on. Wolves on verge of destroying world. Film destroyed. Sleeping sheep destroy Walmart on Black Friday. News at 6. Sheep march for immigration rights. ICE raids school. Polytrixters make deals on superhighways in euros. US economy plunges. Real estate is big in Vietnam, Iran, Iraq, as are war criminals, buying land, investments in infrastructure, drugs, dope the conquered. Want a party in Dar es Salaam? Wars are real estate forays, shoplifting excursions. The secret is they are society and they don't really care about us. Super wolves, super schemes, sleeping sheep, slippery slopes, more sheep slain, no news. Lead story, Giants win. National Guard on streets in Oakland for Oscar Grant rally, no coverage. Marchers riot, film at 6, 10, 11, and during regular programming. Sheep asleep, casualties high, tree lighting news at 11. Father knows best, keeps the truth close to his chest, because it ain't no profit in peace. Sheep are chess pieces. You ain't in the game, you are the game. They praying, they not praying. They the only ones playing. The house is crooked, you can vote on that. The door is nailed shut. You ain't invited. If you found the game, it ain't the game. You got the wrong chips, wooden chips. Try cashing them in. You've been cashed out yesterday. Wait till tomorrow. Follow. Line up. The lies are free. Sign up, serve, join, protect, worship, defend. Keep your eyes closed. Don't peek. The magic works best with eyes closed. Stay asleep. Tomorrow, we will work it out. Tomorrow, smolder in the glitter, splash in the shards of shattered, useless, shiny things. More tomorrow. Stay tuned. Sales, free fear. Sales, more tomorrow. For rent, for sale, lease, cheap. Tomorrow, we will work it out. Sweet dreams. It's only a problem if you wake up.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, wars are real estate forays. Ain't no profit in peace. Ain't that the truth? So thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for representing the Black arts, Black experience in Oakland. And with that, if folks have questions, if folks have questions for Ayodele, please, I believe you're to put those in the Q&A, and then we'll, Beth will come on and yeah.
Thank you so much, Keenan and Ayodele. Now for some questions direct from the audience. Ayodele, can you talk a bit about how the Black arts movement in Oakland is shifting and changing as the city becomes more and more gentrified, particularly West Oakland?
I think you're seeing the lived proof of a continuum. I think you're seeing people who are culture makers really, really animating space and animating the dialogue about what this moment, right this second, means. We sit in a particular moment. I like to describe it as all of the institutions have come into our kitchen, and our kitchen's been consistent. We've been trying to give free, have space, sink roots, be a part of a narrative. It is interesting to watch the way that gentrification works. Nothing in Oakland has changed. It has the same shoreline, the dirt's the same, the air's the same, the port's always been the same. What's different in Oakland now is there's been a huge demographic change. And this conversation is being explored in art. And perhaps that's the boldest place the conversation's being had. What does it mean for people to have no resting place? How do we sustain that conversation? We sustain it in art.
Mark asks, I have read Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, and some of the other well-known Black poets, but do you have recommendations for how we can further educate ourselves? Who are the poets, the Black voices that we should know about that you want to center and highlight?
There's something really dope in the chat. Andrew McClure. I hear you. I'll get back to you in just a second. I'm gonna cheat with that answer, Beth. I'm going to instruct you to pay attention to laureates of color. They out there. It's almost this strange anomaly. Some of the people who have been honored to be poet laureates. I mean, I thought when Tango Ayestin Martin was named the poet laureate of San Francisco that I could die happy. And then I found out they let me do it too. So Daniel Somerville where is he, in Monterey? There are some extraordinary voices in these laureates. And so that can be your shortcut. And then ask that same question of every laureate. Andrew, Claude McKay, the universe talks, you guys. If you listen, the way that it talks is things will just start repeating themselves. I just wrote a piece the other day and used an intertextual connection of Claude McKay. And I thought about that when I came into this room today, when I picked out what to read. And one of the lines I wrote in the piece where I used Claude McKay's name is that I can't be in a room if I can't bring my whole story with me. Now I told him, look out, Claude McKay smuggled himself in with me. So it sort of sets the frame. And I agree with you, If We Must Die and Baraka's Dope have a very, very similar energy. Yes, I'm sorry, Beth, I just had to grab that one.
Good. Can you kind of just, what are a poet laureate's responsibilities? When you were named, if Oakland has never had one before, how are you taking this role? What are you doing with it?
Being the first of anything is disorienting, very difficult, because people can all put their own projections on what they think it should be, because there is no mold. And absolutely liberating, because I get to create it as I go along. So I'm having fun with it. I have loved the opportunity to read in so many different places. I have plans to be able to do even more of that, to take literature, the written word, the spoken word, and orality is just a part of, you asked me earlier, Keenan, about poetry and spoken word. I come from an oral people. And so that's just a part of the skill bar to be able just to flow it, you know? So taking that everywhere and utilizing it to ask people to talk to us. What's on your mind? What's the story of you? What comes next? What do we need? What's missing? You know, I think art is the biggest hack for conversation. I love to talk, and being able to create things lets me talk to lots and lots of people. And so the laureateship is, I have so many dialogues in mind. I have a peeping one. Nomadic Press has expressed interest in supporting a national laureate conversation. It would be lovely to talk to these same laureates I'm asking you to read and have just that conversation. What is it like where you are? How are you using poetry as a banner, you know? So it's good to be first.
Carmen asks, please talk a little bit about platform, open mics, theater, and readings like this. I'm thinking this relates to what you said about the blurry lines between genres. There seem to be blurry lines between the way artists perform or deliver work.
It's kind of one of the artists. I mean, there are pulls between being a specialist and then people being afraid of being a jack of all trade, but a master of none. I'm often referred to as a Renaissance woman. So I'm comfortable in a lot of different houses. I find that it's not so much how that's the impetus for me as it is the commandment to pour forth, to communicate, to tell the story. And so if you only go to open mics, then you only go to open mics. Nothing stops you from joining a book club and doing something in a different way, or hosting your own open mic. The internet is an interesting animal. Since anybody can produce, it's actually opened the door for a lot of garbage. But since anybody can produce, it's also a way for some really profound and powerful things that could not have happened had not some individual poured into it can happen. I host an open mic, the Speakeasy. There's going to be an edition on 27th. Congo Iosin will be present. Also a poet, if you don't know now, you need to. Narcotic the Poet. I like to say you're going to have the Poet Laureate of Oakland, the Poet Laureate of San Francisco, and the guy that name, and another former has such a rich laureate history. They lost 3 laureates last year, but there are still a lot of laureate emeritus in San Francisco. So we're bringing another of those, and some other interesting poets from across the country will be at YBCA on the 14th, and you should come. So.
Okay. Well, with that, we're going to, for our audience who is trying to write this down, don't worry. Our wonderful editorial assistant, Jessica Blau, is taking notes on all of this. We're going to send you links to these upcoming events with Ayodele, as well as links to Keenan's extraordinary article in Alta focused on Ayodele and her work. Keenan's upcoming appearance at the LA Times Festival of Books this coming weekend, where I will finally get to meet him in real life. Thank you so much again. This conversation has been recorded, will be emailed to all of you. We're so grateful. Please, before you go, and before I finally thank our guests, I'd like to invite you next week. We will be discussing the legacy of Tupac Shakur in conversation with Santi Elijah Hawley, who wrote a beautiful article on kind of the long-lasting impact of Shakur's work. He'll be in conversation with Davey D next week here, May 4th, 12:30. And with that, Ayodele, thank you so much for taking the time, and especially for reading for us and for keeping me awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking about what you have to say. It's important. I'm grateful. And Keenan, it's always wonderful to work with you. We're Very grateful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.